So Horsesmouth is one of our strategic partners that we work with, and one of the greatest things about them is the training and support that they provide for advisors on the programs that they offer. And any program you sign up with them, you're going to get expert advice, and we're lucky enough to have Elaine Floyd here with us today. She was an advisor in the trenches, just like all of you, and now she coaches and trains on Social Security, Medicare, and generational planning. And she's going to come up here today and she's going to explain to you guys why generational planning is something you really need to look at, and estate planning is really going to help boost your practice. So if you help me welcome Elaine Floyd to the stage, please.
Thank you. I'd like to tell a tale of two families. First family, the Wilsons, consists of Wayne and Wendy, ages 65 and 63. Wayne and Wendy have two children, William and Whitney, who are now 40 and 37, respectively. William is married to Wanda, and they have two children, Wesley and Wilhelmina, age 12 and 9. Whitney is married to Wilbur, and they have two children, Willow and Weston, age 10 and 7. Pretty typical family, headed by a baby boomer couple, 2 Generation X children, and 4 Millennial or Gen Z grandchildren, 3 generations. The second family is the Millers, Mitchell, age 60, and Mary, age 58. They have 2 children, Maureen and Michael. Maureen, age 28, is married to Melvin, age 43. Michael, age 25, is not married. First, let's talk about the Wilsons. Wayne runs the family business that his father started. It's a construction company that now has 18 employees. His wife, Wendy, works part-time in the family business. Family heritage is very important to the Wilsons. At family gatherings, the children are eager to hear stories about how the business was founded, how hard Wayne's parents worked to get the business going in those early days, and how their commitment was always to their customers, even if it meant working extra hours or sacrificing profits to make good on a promise. Wayne and Wendy are thinking about their future, the future of their children and grandchildren, and the future of their business. They're glad that William enjoys working in the business, and they are grooming him to take over when Wayne retires. As for their personal assets, they've seen an attorney and set up a trust and executed a will. Whitney will be in charge of transferring assets to family members when the time comes. Wayne and Wendy have always been careful and thoughtful with their money, and they've tried to convey these values to their children. The children grew up with a healthy respect for how much work it took to have money to spend. Because of business fluctuations, Wayne and Wendy weren't able to save very much for William and Wendy's college educations, so rather than take out student loans, the children went to public universities. And now they're contributing to 529 college savings plans for their own children. Wayne and Wendy set up a retirement plan for their business, and Wayne, Wendy, and William all contribute to it. Whitney contributes to her retirement plan at her work. Whenever major expenditures are considered, they budget and plan for them. For example, last year they all took a family vacation to Disney World. In planning the trip, they sat down as a family and budgeted for it, deciding where to stay and how long to visit based on the budget. The grandchildren get an allowance and are responsible for buying their own treats and toys. They're encouraged to save some of their allowance for things that cost more than 1 week's allowance. This gives them the experience of delaying gratification and planning their expenditures. The Wilson family has causes they care about, both as a family and as individuals. They like to come together as a family and talk about how they can make the world a better place by donating money to good causes. When it comes to generational planning, the Wilsons are a model family. They are connected and cohesive around the larger values that govern behavior, as well as the financial matters that govern decisions around money. The parents, Wayne and Wendy, share their success with the family and are seeing the fruits of their labors play out in the upstanding behavior of their children and grandchildren. As they look ahead to retirement in their later years, they are proud of the way their children and grandchildren are turning out. The Wilsons' advisor has been involved with the family for years. The advisor took an interest in the children and grandchildren from the very beginning, sending cards or presents when kids were born, and also asking about them at meetings. At the end of each planning session with the clients, the advisor again brings up the children and asks if anyone needs help or information on issues relevant to their time in life, such as college planning, home buying, investing, or general saving for financial goals. The advisor also holds periodic family meetings to discuss finances as a family and to teach financial concepts. For example, when the Wilsons started a gifting program a few years ago with the intention of reducing their estate for estate tax purposes, the advisor opened accounts for the children and grandchildren and helped them invest the money before it could be spent on cars or vacations. This gave the advisor an opportunity to teach the kids about investments, the power of compounding, and taxes. The advisor has opened accounts for the children, minors accounts, 529 plans, and Roth IRAs. These accounts start out small, but they will grow over time. Now let's look at the Millers. Here we have a different situation. Mitchell's grandfather made a fortune in oil. His many millions eventually made their way to Mitchell. Unfortunately, Mitchell's brother was cut out of the father's will due to an old grudge, and Mitchell and his brother are no longer speaking. Of course, Mitchell's father isn't around to see the aftermath of his spiteful decision to deny Mitchell's brother his inheritance. Mitchell and his brother used to be close, but not anymore. Because there's always been plenty of money in the family, Mitchell has never had to work. And despite a Harvard education, he's never been motivated to work. He and Mary have an active social life centered around charitable balls. Mitchell and Mary's daughter, Maureen, married Melvin, who is considerably older than she is and has always been somewhat controlling. From the moment they met, he has always seemed a little too interested in her net worth. Michael, age 25, doesn't work, doesn't go to school, and doesn't know what to do with his life. This is not to say that all wealthy kids grow up this way, but there is something about growing up wealthy that sometimes destroys ambition. The famous investor Warren Buffett once said that he wanted to leave his kids enough that they felt that they could do anything, but not so much that they could do nothing. And he impressed this upon his kids from an early age, so they wouldn't be expecting a large inheritance. The Millers are a sad family, despite or maybe because of all their wealth. They never really knew how to make their affluence take a backseat to the growth and development of the children and of the family as a whole. Each person in the family feels disconnected from the others and directionless. Instead of the grandfather's fortune being used to open doors and provide opportunities, it created family discord and suppressed individual ambition. The Millers' advisor has never met Mitchell and Mary's children and really doesn't know much about them, except that they will inherit millions of dollars someday. At least that's the presumption. The advisor doesn't know anything about the Millers' estate plan, or even if there is one. The advisor has been completely focused on managing the Millers' large portfolio and hasn't really thought about what would happen if Mitchell or Mary were to die. In a proprietary survey, Legacy Capitals found that the majority of college-age millennials want to work with their parents' financial advisor, but receive no financial guidance or advice. When asked, if your parents have a financial advisor, do you receive financial advice and guidance from your parents' advisor? 72% said no. And 47% said they thought it would be beneficial to talk to their parents' advisor. Today, we're going to talk about why generational planning makes sense for advisors and clients. The little story I just told about the Wilsons and the Millers, that's called a cold open. It's a presentation technique we learned about from a book called The Compelling Communicator. And the idea is that instead of coming up on stage, hemming and hawing, introducing yourself, talking about what you're going to be talking about, you launch right into a story. And this, you might think of the Saturday Night Live cold open, only not quite as raunchy as that. The story that Pat Quinn told this morning about the tire incident on the rural Kentucky road, perfect example of a cold open. As soon as he got on stage, we were on the edge of our seats, waiting to hear the end of that story. So the story that you tell establishes relevance. It tells your audience that what you're going to talk about relates to them. Once we learned of this technique, we started revamping our client presentations to incorporate it. This cold open is from one of our Savvy Generational Planning client seminars. It's called Savvy Generational Planning: How to Plan, Communicate, and Execute the Smooth Transfer of Assets and Values from one generation to the next. This particular presentation is geared to all generations. Ideally, parents will bring their adult children and vice versa. Once you've done the cold open and introduced yourself, you'll focus on the key points that you want to get across to your audience. So, let me take a moment to introduce myself. Like Dean and Mike and many of you here, I am a former financial advisor. I got into the business in 1980 after reading a book called The Best Way in the World for a Woman to Make Money. Yes. The book convinced me that even though I'm not a hard-charging salesperson type like my ex-husband was, he was in the business too, I learned that being a woman could work to my advantage in that we are good listeners, we like to teach, and so on. I got hired at E.F. Hutton in Torrance, California. Immediately after passing my Series 7 exam, I spent 2 weeks in the training boardroom. Does anybody remember the training boardroom? This was a room with phone banks and phone books where we spent the day smiling and dialing. I'll never forget the time I read through my script pitching some bond to some unknown person, and after a long pause, the gentleman asked me, "How long have you been in the business?" "Oh, about a week," I thought. I didn't say. So I figured there had to be a better way than cold calling. So as soon as I got back to my office, I started giving seminars. And people ate them up. They clamored for education. So the thinking at the time, though, was that you don't want to tell people too much. You want to just tease them a little bit to get them to come into your office. Still the goal is to bring people into your office, but today we're dealing with more complex subjects. In fact, the subjects are so complex that people still leave wanting more. In fact, it actually sparks more of an interest because they're learning from you how much they don't know about these subjects. So, and also my strategy for getting people into the room was pretty rudimentary. That was pre-internet, pre-email, right? So I'm really amazed at the sophistication that White Glove has brought to this seminar process. It's just amazing. Anyway, back to my story real quick. I left the business in '87. I became a freelance writer, combining my financial knowledge with my newfound writing skills, and I wrote books, articles, all their financial content. Horsesmouth was one of my clients. Horsesmouth was founded in the late '90s rather, and it was formed to provide information and training to financial advisors. So at first I wrote as a freelancer, and then I joined the firm full-time in 2008. And that's the year that we started producing comprehensive training packages for advisors, combining the advisor training and the client presentations and the marketing materials. We started with Savvy Social Security Planning, then Savvy Medicare Planning, and on to Savvy College Planning, Savvy Tax Planning, Savvy Generational Planning, which I'm talking about today. Our whole focus is on educating the advisor so you can educate your clients and build your business by establishing yourself as an expert. People want advisors who are competent and trustworthy. Giving client presentations is a way for you to demonstrate your competence and trustworthiness. And by the way, my story about, is this mic still on? Can you hear me? My story about generational planning and why I'm so passionate about it is that my father got dementia in his old age. He was an accountant all his life. He was so very precise and careful about his money, but he never did any estate planning. And once the dementia set in, I had to take care of everything, paying the bills and everything. And so he went into a nursing home. We had to spend down his assets to pay for it. Once his bank account reached $2,000 and I was in the process of applying for Medicaid for him, he died. So like any good accountant, I guess, he made his money and his life come out even. But because there was so much uncertainty in the whole thing, I didn't know if there were insurance policies or I didn't know anything. I am committed to making sure that my kids know everything they need to know about my finances and what they're going to have to do when the time comes. Okay, back to the Wilsons and the Millers. These are hypothetical families, really a composite of some of the typical high net worth families you see today. Obviously, we're showing the extremes here, but we wanted to point out how doing the right thing, like we saw with the Wilsons, can help you preserve clients and assets and offer real value to your clients' children and grandchildren. Ignoring the next generation we saw with the Millers can cause you to lose those clients and assets. I think most advisors may have experienced the shock of losing a large account after a client's death. One advisor we heard of lost $6 million. The parent dropped dead. There were 3 kids. The advisor had formed relationships with 2 of the kids, but with the 2 daughters, but not the son. And as soon as the aftermath of the death happened, he took that money over to a self-directed account. And there was nothing the advisor could do at that point. Depending on what study you read, up to $68 trillion will pass from the baby boom generation to the Generation X and millennial generations over the next 25 years. We get all kinds of numbers depending on the study, but the aggregate number doesn't matter so much. What matters is your own book of business. So let's think about this for a minute. Think for yourself. How many assets do you have under management? If you were to examine each account, especially your larger accounts, do you know what would happen to those accounts upon the death of the account holder? If they died tomorrow, say? Let's assume that most of your clients are married couples. If one spouse dies, can you be sure the surviving spouse will stay with you? What about your single or already widowed clients? What will happen at their death? You know, we're always harping on clients to do their estate planning, which they resist because they don't want to think about death. Well, advisors don't want to think about death either. Sure, you do your beneficiary forms and you tell clients to do their wills and trusts, but do you really know what would happen once the assets fall into the hands of those beneficiaries? Now is the time to start doing your own version of estate planning, which is getting to know your clients' kids. We've read that up to 90% of new heirs fire their parents' advisors in the first year. Again, the exact number depends on what study you read, but it doesn't matter. What matters is whether or not you get fired. And here are some reasons new heirs fire their parents' advisors. 1, they've never even met their parents' advisor. Think about this from the beneficiary's point of view. Your parent dies, so you've got that trauma to deal with. Once everything is sorted out and you realize you're coming into some money, you're not sure where to turn. Some strange person calls you up claiming to be your parents' financial advisor, whom you don't know from Adam. You may have read about people getting scammed after receiving an inheritance, so you're on high alert. Why would you necessarily go to this advisor versus someone your friend or accountant recommended? 2, they may have their own advisor. Again, let's think about this from the client's point of view. Say your clients are in their 60s or 70s and have kids in their 30s or 40s. They would be old enough by now to have some assets and accounts of their own. If they don't have accounts with you, who do they have their accounts with? Somebody. Now, it's possible they have a small self-directed account, in which case they might be very responsive to your offer to help them with their inheritance. But don't wait for their parents to die to find out. Start working with the kids now. Maybe the kids have never felt the need for an advisor. Maybe all they have is a small IRA and a 401k plan at work. Or maybe they have some assets but have been okay investing on their own in mutual funds or ETFs. You know, a lot of baby boomers never saw the need for a financial advisor until it hit them that the distribution phase of retirement planning was way more complicated than the accumulation phase. And your parents' kids could be in the same spot. But even if there's nowhere close to retiring, they could probably use some advice on how to manage the assets that they have. Or maybe they don't know what an advisor can do for them. So many young people are used to doing everything on the internet these days. They don't really know how sitting down with a living, breathing financial advisor can help them with the questions they have as well as the questions they haven't thought of yet. You at least owe it to your clients and their children to call a meeting and lay out what you can do for them. Let's face it, without the proper preparation and training, most new heirs think of money as something to be spent. Once they get over the grief of losing a parent, visions of homes, cars, and vacations dance in their heads. They know nothing about how their fortune can be quickly eroded by taxes and foolish spending. Obviously, this is terrible for the family. The clients who worked so hard with you to invest their money and save on taxes would be devastated to know how much of it is lost to the government through lack of planning. Those million-dollar IRAs, beneficiaries who don't know they can spread the distribution out over several years might cash it all out the first year, creating a whopping tax bill. Beneficiaries who aren't prepared for their inheritance and who think only of spending could run through it in no time and not even feel good about it. Studies have shown that sudden money can create great psychological harm, anxiety, and confusion. And all you can ask, would your clients have wanted this? It's also terrible for you. A loss of assets means a loss of revenues to your firm and less income for you. And a loss of assets and revenues devalues the firm. If you ever plan to sell your firm someday, buyers of financial planning practices not only look at current assets and revenues, but also the age of the clients. If most of your clients are in their 70s and 80s, and if you can't show that you've developed relationships with their children in order to keep those assets, you might get less for the sale of your firm. So let's talk about some solutions. Savvy generational planning is a way to connect the generations in order to avoid the problems we just talked about. It's a set of tools and strategies that enable you to reach out to your clients and their children and offer them education and advice while their parents are still alive. Now, I don't want it to sound like I'm selling product up here because I'm really not. We have Miriam over here at our booth to do that. But what I'm really talking about is the process and the thinking that went into the creation of this product. And so that's really what I want to get across here. How to bring the generations together in a natural and compelling way, whether you do it with our program or whether you take the information and develop your own. We realize that for some clients, generational planning can be a touchy subject. So let's look at some of their concerns. And by the way, these next slides are directly from our client presentation. So you can see how we understand this issue from the perspective of the parents and the children. And those initial slides about the Wilsons and the Millers, also from the client presentation. So first, let's look at it from the parents' standpoint. Number one, they may not want to commit to leaving an inheritance at all. You've seen those bumper stickers that say, "I'm spending my children's inheritance." Well, some people will have to spend what they thought might be their children's inheritance. The biggest drain on assets, of course, near the end of life is long-term care. If one or both parents have to go into a nursing home or have at-home, around-the-clock care, there may not be anything left to hand down to the children. So a lot of parents are reluctant to set up expectations of an inheritance because there may not be any. Second, some parents are afraid their children will fail to maximize their potential if they're depending on an inheritance. We saw this with the Miller family. The kids knew early on that they would be coming into a lot of money, and it deadened their ambition. It is a legitimate fear. Parents may also fear repercussions of certain estate planning decisions they've made. It's every parent's prerogative to distribute assets however they wish. Maybe one child has chosen to be an artist or a teacher and has greater financial need than the others. Maybe they feel, for whatever reason, one child doesn't deserve very much of an inheritance. Whatever. It's possible in cases like this that decisions made in the privacy of their attorney's office would create discord and hurt feelings if they were brought out in the open. And this is understandable. People have their reasons for making decisions, and they are what they are. So right up front, before calling any family meetings, be sure to get the clients to talk about any concerns they have and reassure them that you will work with them in a way that's not disruptive to the family. Quite simply, it's possible to do generational planning without revealing the size of the estate or the nature of the assets or the bequest intentions. Some parents are open books with their families, others are not. So you just want to make sure that you honor their wishes in this regard. The children might also have their own concerns. What keeps the children from talking about estate planning with their parents? To start, they don't want to think about their parents dying. That's a subject they'd just rather not deal with. Second, they don't want to appear greedy. It's perfectly normal for children to wonder if their parents have done their estate planning, but to broach the subject might make it sound like they're just waiting for their parents to die so they can get their hands on the money. That's probably not their intent, but they're worried that that's what it'll look like. And finally, adult children are busy with their own lives. They barely have time to go to work, help kids with homework, and get dinner on the table, much less find the time for a family meeting to discuss something that hopefully will be far in the future. Once you've gotten the client's permission, you can help the children out here by broaching the subject so they don't have to. No child wants to bring up the subject of their parents' death, but if you, as the objective intermediary and financial professional, bring it up, you can spare the children a lot of discomfort and get everything out in the open. In addition to the estate planning, talk about how you can help the children with their own financial matters. And start teaching them financial concepts that they'll need throughout life and especially upon receiving their inheritance. It may seem obvious that advisors would want to reach out to their clients' children in order not to lose those assets, but only 20% of advisors are targeting the younger family members of their clients, according to one study. What are some reasons for this? Well, some advisors may not be sure how to go about reaching out to family members. Maybe it feels like you're asking for their business. You'd rather have them come to you when they're ready. But you're not really asking for their business. You are offering to help them with their financial needs. If you just flip that around, it's not something you want, it's something you are providing to them. Some advisors said it wasn't worth their time, that it took too much effort for not a lot of payoff. But if I may state the obvious, the payoff comes later when your client's assets do not go out the door. It's like an insurance policy. So take a moment right now to think of your 3 best clients. How many assets do they represent? Now imagine your clients dying tomorrow. That's what you're telling them to do, right? And a month later, account transfer forms come in. Now how much effort would you be willing to put in to make sure those assets stay? Some advisors say they'll retire before those relationships with younger family members ever pay off. Fair enough. If you don't plan on selling your business and would just close the doors when you retire, maybe you have a point. But I think most advisors would be more interested in maximizing the value of their business before they retire. Some advisors say there's too much dilution in the estate to make it profitable to carry on. Between the inheritance being split among several heirs and the immediate spending that always seems to happen, there's not enough left to make for a profitable client. Also fair enough. I would just say that maybe you could reduce some of that immediate spending if you helped your clients' children understand how much more financially secure they could be if they invested most of that money instead of spending it. In any case, we're not talking about necessarily doing generational planning with all of your clients. You can decide for yourself which clients you want to focus on. It may only be 10 or 15 of your best clients. Starting the conversation is always the hardest. Advisors can do this much more easily than clients can. So you might do this in the context of incapacity planning. As you know, every client should sign an advance directive for health care and a power of attorney for finances, appointing someone close to them to step in should they become incapacitated. Well, most of your clients, hopefully, have already done this. But for new clients or for anyone else who has not, just ask, who would take care of you if you got hit by a bus? And this starts the conversation. But then you can use it to learn more about the people close to the client and perhaps suggest a meeting to go over the responsibilities of an attorney, in fact, who is called in to act on behalf of the client in the event of incapacity. Here's another conversation starter. Maybe at the time you're updating beneficiary designations. If you died tomorrow, would your kids know how to handle their inheritance? Rather than seeing those beneficiary designations as a task to check off the list, use it to inquire about the beneficiaries. With the passage of the Secure Act, all beneficiary designations should be reviewed now. With the stretch now gone, some clients may want to name someone different. As they're giving you their names, show an interest in learning more about those beneficiaries. Who are they? How old are they? And importantly, will they know what to do with the IRA when the time comes for them to inherit it? Briefly explain the RMD rules for inherited IRAs and suggest setting up a meeting to inform the beneficiaries. As you're learning the names and ages of the beneficiaries, and not, not just the IRA beneficiaries, but those named in wills and trusts, everybody, inquire about possible financial issues they may need help with. Your clients may not know that you can help with college planning, mortgage planning, and other things that are of interest to younger people. Give them a brief rundown of how you might be able to help their kids and offer to set up a meeting. When you meet with the children, mention the parents' estate plan. You don't have to go into great detail, and you certainly don't want to break any confidences, but children will be relieved to know that their parents have done something about it. For those clients who are willing to be open about their estate plans, make it a family meeting where the parents discuss their plans, the children ask questions, and you serve as intermediary, explaining things and answering questions. If the parents want to keep their affairs private, that's okay too. You can talk about the estate planning in more general terms and focus more on the children's financial needs. Focus on educating the children on general financial topics, the power of compounding, investments, taxes, and so on. Educate them just as you would any new client with assets, because someday they will have assets. A recent survey by Investopedia called the Affluent Millennial Investing Survey found that the majority of affluent millennials do not feel knowledgeable about investing. The truth is that those who feel knowledgeable are 5 times more likely to feel confident about making financial decisions. Those who feel confident are 3 times more likely to be highly engaged with their personal finances, and those who are engaged with their finances are 2 times more likely to feel knowledgeable. So it all feeds on itself, but only 37% of affluent millennials do feel knowledgeable about investing. Affluent millennials who consider themselves financially knowledgeable are more likely to associate investing with positive emotions and less likely to find it intimidating, risky, or overwhelming. This is only natural. We all fear what we don't understand. So you can help the younger generations emotionally and financially by teaching them about investing and other financial concepts. Even though millennials have time on their side, and it's clear that over time the historical performance of stocks exceeds that of more conservative investments, millennials and Gen Xers tend to have their money in bonds, CDs, annuities, and savings accounts. If these generations aren't careful, they're going to end up in their own retirement crisis. You might consider it your public duty to start educating the younger generations on how to invest in stocks and other higher performing investments. Some affluent millennials do have financial advisors. According to the survey, 43% of them have an advisor. These are the affluent ones. The number increases to 58% if their parents have an advisor. In these cases, the parent's financial advisor was probably meeting with the younger generation and taking them on as clients as well, just like we're talking about today. At the very least, the millennials got a positive impression of their financial advisor from their parents' experience. Some good news is that nearly 2/3 of the affluent millennials surveyed said they trust financial advisors. Here's what some millennials said about the value of having an advisor. "I feel the personal connection gives them more stake in my success," said one. "Because they've received the most training, schooling, etc., in the field and are the most knowledgeable," according to another. Other affluent millennials cited the ability to have a two-way conversation and develop personalized strategies, and the belief that financial advisors are accountable since their careers depend on knowledge and expertise. And here we see something we might know intuitively, that learning early about investing is a good thing. The sweet spot seems to be between the ages of 15 and 20, according to this survey. Millennials who first learned about investing between the ages of 15 and 20 feel more knowledgeable than those who learned earlier. when they probably weren't as open to the information, or those who learned later. But regardless of your clients' children's ages, you can get started educating them now in an age-appropriate way. This Investopedia report was summed up by a comment by one financial advisor, which I'm sure would be echoed by all of you. Not investing is what is risky. If you don't save or invest, the true risk is that you will never have any level of financial independence. Preaching to the choir here. Oh, as an aside, this just came out like a couple weeks ago. Apex Clearing recently unveiled its fourth quarter Millennial 100 report, which analyzed more than 734,000 portfolios owned by US-based investors born between 1981 and 1986, with an average age of just over 31. Of those millennials who invest in stocks, Apple is the big favorite, followed by Amazon, Tesla, Facebook, and Microsoft. Take it for what it's worth. This is what they like. Okay, so once you've talked to the children about their parents' estate planning and started educating them on investments and other financial concepts, offer to help them with their own financial issues. Maybe it starts with setting up a savings plan and an investment program. Maybe they have student loans or other debt and they need a plan for paying it off. Maybe an IRA. Maybe they need help with their 401k options at work. So start asking questions. Find out what they need. If the clients are open to it, you might broaden your conversation to include family goals. In this country, each nuclear family tends to keep its money separate, and that's fine. Parents might occasionally give money to children and grandchildren, but when it comes to addressing serious financial goals, each generation is usually on its own. But for clients who are open to it and who don't want to wait until they die for their money to do some good, consider holding periodic family meetings where you discuss goals as a family and perhaps lay out a plan for meeting them. These next slides are again from the client presentation, so you can see how you'll be touching on issues that are important to them. Every family wants to make sure that the children are supported until they're old enough to get out on their own. People take this for granted, of course, but by setting this as a goal for clients and their children, the children who are parents may be more likely to consider contingency planning. So what if the parents of your client's children, the client's grandchildren, what if the parents died unexpectedly? Who would raise the children? How would they be supported? Consider this a wake-up call for parents of minor children to do their own estate planning so they can name a guardian in case something happens. College education is another goal people take for granted, but without proper planning, they may find themselves scrambling to pay for it. And by the way, when we talk about setting goals for the family, we're not at this point addressing how those goals will be met or which family members will be responsible. Some grandparents help with their grandchildren's college education, others don't. And there's no right way to do it. All we're doing here is suggesting some possible goals for the family that you can bring out into the open. And then later, when you meet individually, you can be more specific about the goals themselves and how to go about meeting them. Another major goal for many families is home ownership. Again, we're not addressing the specifics of the goal or any promises of down payment or anything like that. Right now, we're just getting the goals out in the open. Some parents joke about being the bank of mom and dad, but really, intra-family loans can benefit everyone concerned if they're appropriate and done right. Say there's a budding entrepreneur in the family, a young adult who has an idea for a business and just needs seed capital. Instead of applying at a bank for a small business loan, which is hard to get anyway, why not borrow from the family? It can be set up so the lender receives an attractive interest rate or equity in the business. This is another way families can help each other financially, as long as they're thoughtful and careful about it. Here's a fun goal everyone can get behind: family vacations. Whether clients choose to take a family vacation every year or save up for a special family vacation, they're bound to make more of their vacations if they set goals and plan for them. And this proves that estate planning doesn't always have to be tedious and not fun. It can be fun. The elder generation isn't the only generation that is or hopes to be retired someday. Everyone in the family should be thinking ahead to retirement. This is one of those universal goals that can be addressed in the context of savvy generational planning. There are some goals that are fun to contemplate and work toward, and then there's long-term care. This is one of those goals that every family needs to think about. As the elder generation grows older and lives longer, they may need help with activities of daily living. This is too big a burden to leave to daughters and sons. You can help clients address this important goal in a way that is right for the whole family. Both the parents and the sons and daughters will be glad to get it out on the table. You know, in a lot of cases, it's the kids who are really like hoping and praying that their parents have a plan for long-term care. And so this is a perfect issue for bringing those generations together. Another goal of many families is philanthropy. It can be fun and inspiring for the whole family, including the children, to work together to identify important causes and map out a plan for donating to them. Okay, now that we've talked about the importance of reaching out to your clients' children and grandchildren and doing some real generational planning with them, how do you do it? Well, we just happen to have several tools and resources that will allow you to work with these families that will be handing down generational wealth. So again, I'm going to be talking about our programs, but I want you to just get the concepts and the processes, and you're free to do these on your own. But first, we have 2 client presentations. One is called 6 Steps to Legacy Planning for the Generations. Start leaving your mark today. This presentation focuses on the parents' generation and what they need to do to prepare for that great transfer of wealth. It's a highly motivating presentation that will get your audience members thinking about the importance of estate planning and also the baby boomers' desire for legacy planning, that is, leaving their mark upon the world and defining what they want to be remembered for. The 6 steps range from planning for incapacity, to getting organized, to creating your family legacy by writing down family stories and memoirs. So at least one of these steps is sure to motivate your seminar attendees to follow up with you. And if we talk about, the head and the heart, and a lot of times married couples, one is more tactical, one is more emotional, at least one of these 6 steps will appeal to each spouse. So it's a pretty effective seminar. The second presentation is for families and children, and contains some of the slides we looked at here today. It is all about how to plan, communicate, and execute the smooth transfer of assets and values from one generation to the next. And it can be delivered to any generation. Parents who come to it will be motivated to start including their kids in their financial plans. Younger generations who come to it might be motivated to nudge their parents about estate planning. And parents and children can come together and get ideas about how they might work together on generational planning. The program includes customizable invitations for the workshops, but then of course you have white glove to do that for you as well. And client handouts. One is a high-quality laminated informative piece on estate planning. You get 50 copies to start, and you can always order more. The other is a brief piece on generational planning and how parents and children can each start the conversation. This is all designed, professionally designed and available on PDF for you to take to your printer. To help with your family meetings, you get a first meeting guide that walks you through some of the concepts we've been talking about today. It starts with a legacy planning assessment that asks clients questions like, have you thought about how you want your assets distributed after your death? Have you organized your family photos, written down your family stories, scheduled some time to teach children and grandchildren what you've learned over your lifetime, and made a list of the most important values and ideals? This checklist points out gaps in planning that clients can start working on. In addition, there's a detailed legacy planning checklist that covers things like incapacity planning, organizing records, identifying beneficiaries, creating a legacy, and so on. Within each category are specific tasks, such as sign healthcare directive or meet with attorney. There's a column for date assigned and date completed. We recognize that generational and estate planning is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen in one day. So we've made it easier by providing the checklist where you can gently assign a deadline as a motivator and then check it off when it's completed. The legacy planning worksheets will help clients with the intangible side of estate planning, compiling all the stories and memories they want to hand down to their children and grandchildren. These worksheets ask about things like significant life events, such as marriage and career moves, family ancestry, what life was like when they were growing up, hobbies and interests, and views and values. There are lists of questions that will help jog clients' memories. Your clients will love this, but don't let them put it off too long. You want to capture those memories while they're still there, right? There's also a client meeting guide, which will walk you through some of the things we talked about today. There's a list of values and goals to help with family goal setting. There's a financial concepts quiz that you can give young people to reveal how much they know and don't know about personal finance and investing. There are financial education resources that you can point clients to, so you don't have to bear the full burden of educating them about financial concepts. And then there is an executor checklist, which will be very useful to the executor when the time comes. Working with professionals is an important part of generational planning too. We give you the tools for this. First, we set forth the idea that the estate planning team comprises several different professionals who will ideally all work together for the benefit of the client. This is called collaborative estate planning, as defined by the National Association of Estate Planners and Counsels. In addition to the financial advisor, there may be several attorneys specializing in different areas, plus a CPA, a life insurance specialist, a real estate agent, a business advisor, a trust administrator, a geriatric care manager, a philanthropic advisor, and maybe even a family therapist or coach. Not all estate planning teams will be this comprehensive, but the point is that it takes several professionals to pull an estate plan together. And this is your opportunity to interact with centers of influence and perhaps set up a cross-referral relationship. We postulate that the financial advisor is the ideal person to lead the estate planning team. If you define estate planning as not just the transfer of wealth at death, but also includes the accumulation, conservation, and preservation of wealth, the financial advisor fulfills a key role. Much of the work of estate planning, the accumulation, conservation, and preservation of wealth, takes place during a client's lifetime. As the financial advisor, this is what you do, right? Because of this, you know the client better, and you see the client more often. Attorneys are usually brought in later, when clients are ready to do their wills and trusts, but you've been working with the clients long before then. You have more insight into the client, and you can share these insights with the other members of the estate planning team. To help you cultivate relationships with centers of influence, we've created a special client presentation called Opportunities for Collaboration and Joint Business Development for delivery to attorneys, accountants, and other professionals. You see, these other professionals are interested in developing business too. And here you are proposing that you all work together to exchange referrals and help clients. The handout for centers of influence is organized into client goals. You know, sometimes attorneys define estate planning by what they do, the wills and the trusts and so on. We are flipping this around, and we are starting with client goals, such as, which is what you normally do when you work with clients, right? That's how you work. So this is much more meaningful to clients and a much better approach to estate planning and generational planning. So we've listed 8 lifetime goals, such as assuring sufficient lifetime income, making sure healthcare wishes are carried out, and achieving charitable objectives, and then 7 post-death goals, such as assuring sufficient income for survivors, minimizing taxes and expenses, assuring the smooth transfer of assets at death, and continued management of inherited assets. This handout, which you can customize with your logo and contact information, is a great marketing tool and basis for your COI meetings. It also talks about the benefits of collaborative estate planning and the best ways to work together. The 150-page advisor guide to savvy generational planning gives you a good briefing on the estate planning concepts so you can speak the same language with other professionals. Part 1 talks about working with clients and gives instructions for filling out some of the forms we talked about. Part 2 deals with working with family members and includes beneficiary preparation and so on. Part 3 talks about the estate planning team and how to work with those other professionals. And Part 4 is some 25 pages on estate planning tools and strategies, including tax planning, life insurance and annuities, wills, trusts, and planning for long-term care, lifetime gifts, and charitable gifts. We're not trying to turn you into an attorney or accountant, but understanding some of these key laws will help you converse with these other professionals. There's a CE exam in the back of the book for all the CFPs. Passing score will give you 6 credits. The marketing toolkit will help you put all the marketing materials and concepts together to build your business. It includes timelines, checklists, templates, FINRA letters, and much more. Everything you need to get started building your business around generational planning. So you can hold on to those client assets, right, and help your clients' children and grandchildren achieve and maintain financial security. So to recap, generational planning is good for your clients. They've worked hard for their money. They've managed it carefully. They've tried to minimize taxes. Before they leave this earth, they want to know that the same prudence that they displayed all their lives will continue to be exercised by their loved ones after they're gone. Generational planning is good for your clients' children. Without some lessons and advice, they run the risk of squandering their parents' hard-earned wealth and failing to meet their own objectives. And generational planning is good for you. It will allow you to keep more assets under management and not lose them to outside advisors. And I don't need to say this, but the more assets you have, the more revenues you'll generate and the more valuable your firm will be. Whether you view this from a positive perspective, that is keeping clients, getting referrals, raising revenues, or from a risk management perspective where you do these things to keep from losing clients, it's your call. But generational planning is the hot topic today, so I hope you'll take advantage of the resources being offered to you here today and tomorrow, and to kick off a new campaign to reach out to baby boomers and their kids, as well as estate planning professionals who work with them and are in a position to refer new business to you. This is the last slide from one of the client presentations, so we'll show it here for you. Savvy generational planning is not hard. You just have to get started. And that's all I have. Thank you.